Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, and as well as first timers in the chat. So, tonight we're going to do a little bit something a little bit different. I'm going to basically talk about one account that I received, but there's some twists and turns with it. Um, in 2011, I received an account from an Ohio woman who had previously shared her intuitive experiences with me. Now, this woman led a difficult life growing up, even though she was quite astute. Um, it was also obvious that the family dealt with a fair bit of dysfunction, as you'll hear as I go deeper into the story. Now, her parents, particularly her father, realized she possessed intuitive and psychic abilities. And in fact, I believe her father was also intuitive. Now, the remarkable narrative may very well add credence to the Mothman phenomena. And frankly, I have no reason not to believe the story. I've looked into it a lot, and it kind of covers all the bases. Now, I didn't edit the original text except for a few minor errors, and I realized that the allegory is a little bit hard to follow at certain spots, but I wanted to see the integrity of the experiencer's thoughts and emotions. So this account resulted in quite a bit of feedback. Also, several listeners to this show have asked me to read this account. So, that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the show.
We live in a reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
Well, I'm back. So, before I go any further, I want to mention that the channel was made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. And the buy me a coffee and other donation links are also shown in the description. Now, thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcomed. Tell me which accounts you found interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, and for their commitment to me in the channel, as well as I want to acknowledge Christina and Kevin at Elevate Souls Productions. Now, if you're in the chat and have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one after the presentation. So, the experiencer DR, and that's what I'm going to refer to her as, writes to me. She told me, in 1967, 2 weeks before the collapse of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a phone call came to our house south of Lancaster, Ohio. It was from Dad's friends in southwestern West Virginia. Someone else in in our house answered the phone because my dad was busy watching the evening news. So he yelled to whoever answered it to ask them what they wanted. The answer was that they had some trouble over in West Virginia and needed Dad to come down. Now, he asked what the trouble was, and the person on the other end said it was a big bird. Well, we had just seen a story about this on the news, and the anchor who reported it laughed about it. And they're talking about the Mothman at Point Pleasant. Dad laughed and said that it was a good one and to tell the person this and then hang up. Well, a short time after, the phone rang again. This was when a long distance call cost an arm and a leg. So dad asked what was going on. And again, it was that they had this big bird that had done some damage and they needed help to hunt it down. He took the phone call. Then we all heard him saying, "All my guns and all my ammunition." What the heck is going on down there? There were a couple of okays, and then I heard him ask why this man's daughter needed to talk to me. I was explained it was explained to me that this youngest girl I had what they thought was an imaginary friend, but asking to talk to me was a good sign that she was coming out of this mentally and emotionally and I was to play along. It was supposed to be for her own good. Now I was 10 years old and she was maybe a few months behind me. I got on the phone and she asked if this was in my name and I said yes. I asked what her name was and she said what it was, and I met her once before and she was very introverted and really didn't mix with us. She showed us some rocks and bugs, but didn't really get involved into getting to know us. That's why I was shocked that this girl asked for me by name. I told her I had a good memory, and she said it wasn't her memory that got my name from. And I thought, okay, she's a bit touched, as they say. I asked where she got my name to ask for me, and she said it was her friend who was a man, but wasn't a man. I said, okay, who is this friend and what does he want from me? She began to relate that while talking one day, he told her my name and said he wanted her to contact me and asked me to come down there to talk to him. I said I'd have to talk to my parents first. I got off the phone and dad wanted to know what was up with this girl. I said there was no way she knew my name. He asked where she got it then, and I told him that, and he got a little alarmed and called their house to ask some questions about this man that wasn't a man and who he might be. Now, they assured him that it wasn't anyone near them as they were out in the quiet country road with only a few neighbors. She said this friend of hers wasn't one of them. They checked the woods where she said she had met him and never found any footprints or signs that anyone had been there with her. So, because this was urgent, we packed up quickly and headed down there from central Ohio. Now, we drove down there. So, while we waited in line to cross the Silver Bridge from the Ohio side to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, I was watching a crossbeam on the top of this bridge on our side of the river swing back and forth as if it was not attached to one end. The bridge clanged and made all sorts of racket when a car was crossing it. My parents could tell that I was becoming very nervous, so I was told just to sit back and relax. I felt my eyes getting heavy, like I was slipping right into a comfortable rest. Now, the next thing I knew, I heard screaming and found myself horizontally above my brothers, clawing at the window, screaming to be let out because the bridge was going into the river. Alarmed, my dad pulled the car out of line and parked on the side of the road. He asked me when this was going to happen. I told him that I had to rest. I was exhausted. So I sat back and slipped once again into a relaxed state. And again, I found myself across from my brothers with my siblings holding my legs and ankles to keep me from going out the window. I realized I was screaming again and clawing at the window. I snapped to attention. I asked what was going on, and they all said that I had been okay, and then suddenly lunged for the window to claw my way out while screaming hard. My mom and my siblings were upset by my reactions. Dad, on the other hand, told them to hush while he walked me through what I was seeing. I told him that I was in a vehicle and it was falling off that bridge into the river below, and I saw every inch of the fall to the water and even below the water's surface. I was horrified when it was slow enough for me to see all this clearly. Now, Dad asked if we'd get across okay that day and when we were supposed to go back home. I searched my mind and saw it was okay to cross. He had me tell him what would cause the bridge to fall. When he heard what I had seen in my mind, he was utterly horrified. Now, structurally, that bridge should not have been used at all. I won't go into that part, but to say that I got it right on each count. He was quiet all the way to his friend's place, except occasionally he would ask me when this would happen. I remember looking in my mind and eventually telling him it would happen in about 2 weeks. Now, note, 2 weeks later, we were sitting watching the TV when the news alert came across to say that the Silver Bridge had fallen into the river. Mom got a calendar right away and checked it to make sure how long it had been. She cried a bit and then asked me to come over to her. She held me tighter than I ever remember previously or since. I'd forgotten all about what happened 2 weeks prior because it was traumatic, not just for my vision, but for what happened at the people's house. So, by the way, Lon, I hope this helps others, but I can't have identifying information coming back to me about this for certain reasons. So, I will continue. Now, we drove a long time before arriving, and Dad went in to talk to these people as we set up our tent to sleep outside. The man came out and said to put it away because we wouldn't want to be sleeping out there with the troubles they have had there. It didn't make any sense to any of us how the big bird could be scaring these peoples that bad, but they were scared badly. While the adults got the lowdown, we kids went up into the woods to take care of the imaginary friend thing. Now the older kids checked everything out to make sure there was no one and nothing to harm us when they left. We were not far into the woods and it was not all that thick with growth. Now the driveway was wide and it was a sunny day. They all left and I put my younger brother with her brother about 15 feet from us at the edge of the woods. We all grew up in the woods, so there was nothing any of us didn't know how to deal with if confronted with it. We were well practiced. I just wanted to get this over with, but the girl was being timid. She said I'd think she was nuts. I laughed and said that sometimes people don't understand, but they need to give it time to sink in. I gained her confidence and she opened up to me. She said he would scare me if I saw him straight on. I said there wasn't much that scared me anymore with three brothers and that challenged my life at every turn. She looked worried and said that he was special and didn't look like us. Well, I thought he was disfigured or something, but no, that wasn't it either. I said that sooner or later, if I was to talk to this man, I'd have to see him to understand what he wanted to tell me. I was thinking that maybe there was some wildlife around there that she wasn't familiar with that she couldn't see clearly, so it scared her. No, she said that wasn't it either. She said I had to promise not to look unless he said it was okay. I said I didn't want to be close to him then if I needed to take off in a hurry, and she said I couldn't do that because it would upset him. I let out a big sigh and she just gave me a look and said that this was very important because he'd been very nice to her and been a good friend when she had no others. Okay, so I appeased her a bit and said I'd play along and be extra nice so I could get this over with. And she kept saying not to be alarmed, and she had said she had been the first time she had saw excuse me. She said, kept saying not to be alarmed, and she said had been the first time she saw him. She said he was very big, and I was thinking she must have lost her mind. I saw movement, and there was something looking like a very tall, spindly marionette up against up next to these skinny tall trees. I asked her how she and her siblings had accomplished that. I was laughing, but she was looking at me like she had no idea what I was talking about. Then it walked out of the trees without any visible support. I was like, okay, there's got to be a sensible explanation to this. So I asked if I could move forward after a while to get a better look. I told her I could take this. Well, she asked him, and he said it was okay. Before that, though, he wanted to talk to my mind, she said. I thought, "Oh, girl, this thing moved again as if shifting from side to side in a standing position. It was human like. I began to hear this man's voice in my mind, and it's conversing with me. It's all like happy to talk to me finally, and so excited by my coming to see him. I thought I caught this girl's insanity and slapped myself in the side of the face to shake this voice out of my head. It was wrong. I told her. She said that was normal. I had news for her, but not yet. I had been ordered to see that this was a I had been ordered to see what this was about from her father. This voice seems to be riffling through all my memories like wildfire and then downloading high quality video. Like being there in my mind about that bridge falling and other things in the future. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, so I tried to maintain my balance mentally by reminding myself that I was just playing along and this would all turn out to be an elaborate hoax. I inched closer and closer to the edge of this driveway and then a drop off where the bulldozer had shoved the dirt for it. Movement caught my eye, and I looked down to see these big orange bird feet. I thought, oh my God, what is this? Is that doing in the woods? I took a very slow, very meticulous look up at the legs attached to these feet, and they looked stork like. The feet shifted by one picking up and then the other doing it. It was a human like movement, but also bird like. I let my eyes go very slowly up the legs to the body and then to the chest. I could count the ribs. There appeared to be scant feathers on its skin, which were grayish. The more I looked, the worse it got, but I gritted my teeth and kept my thinking to a minimum. I looked at these wings folded behind their back, but out a bit to the side. I could see through them a bit, but they looked leathery and stretchy. I looked at the shoulders, which in truth were topped with sharp bumps, which I realized were from the wings being folded behind its body. I inadvertently got a good look at its head, and a wave of revulsion hit me. I said I was going to just back up slowly to get a better look from a distance. I think it picked up on my fear, and I heard it in my mind again. It was upset that I feared it. I explained with my mind, crazy as that sounds, just thinking I'd seen some people who were disfigured in my time, and this was scary too. I just have to get used to it. I did want to get out of there with my life unscathed. This was nuts. This thing wanted to chat with me. I suddenly had to go to the bathroom badly, and I told the girl this, and she said we'd have to go to the house. He told her, and I heard it too, that he knew I was scared and he was very upset. Then he got into a part of my mind that showed what I went through at home and somewhere else. a big building in a big city that I didn't remember except in bits. He was livid at me seeing the entire breadth of whatever that was about. I told them both out loud that this wasn't right for this girl or I to be talking to him. He said his kind didn't want any of them mixing with us because it was dangerous for them. He'd show me where they were from, and it wasn't this planet. It was I was feeling dizzy, and my brother saw me stagger a bit. I said I had to go, and this girl had to help me down to the house. So we were going to leave now, and she and I were about to be in big trouble because I wasn't allowed to keep such a secret. I got out of the woods okay and got up against their garage and wet myself. Then I felt like I was losing control of my body and was shaking all over. My brother went and got dad. I told him to stay close to the garage because it was out there somewhere and it was huge. He thought I was nuts, but I told him sternly that this man that wasn't a man was a huge creature with wings and big orange feet. He laughed and I said, "I'm not joking. We must get into the house." We all got into the house, and the girl was livid with me for telling my dad because I wasn't supposed to tell, and now the man was angry with her. My head hurt badly. The adults got their guns out. Phone calls were made in a short order. Men with guns and pickups and cars came flying into the driveway. Dad wouldn't allow me to tell mom or anyone else what I had seen. No one. I wanted to cry, but I felt stunned, shocked, and scared. They got me cleaned up, and we all sat trying to be quiet. We tried to listen what was going on. That was an awful experience. The men went into the woods, leaving the women with guns. They soon came back as it was almost dark. We began to see these huge stick looking figures darting past the picture window out front and then the back window and the door, the kitchen door and windows. There were more than one of them. All the guns got loaded and we were put into the middle of the house. There was clawing on the roof, sightings, and windows. This went on for hours, and I finally just went to sleep. I was hot and probably in shock, so I just went to sleep. Everything eventually went quiet, and it stayed that way for hours. I woke up needing to go to the bathroom. There was a window, so someone had to stand there with a gun as I went. Something came to the window and began to claw at it. But then I didn't know what this was or why it was happening. I was given a magazine and put my whole mind on it and read. When I did this, something stopped outside, or everything stopped outside. I got tired and quit doing that while wondering what was going on, and it began all over again. We could all hear the tin being torn off the roof. I went back to sleep and everything was quiet, and the rest of what was left of the night. So the next day we packed up and started home. Dad asked before we got to the bridge if we'd be okay crossing it. I looked into my mind and saw it was okay. They wanted they wanted to know this repeatedly. I was sure. On the Ohio side of the river, my brothers and sisters began to talk about what was going on. Something big swooped down at the car and began to claw at it. This happened off and on all the way home. We could hear this thing holding on to the top of the car. Now, once home, I was sent to my room and told to go to sleep. Well, I didn't. I was listening to what they were saying downstairs. One of my brothers ran downstairs and said there was noise on the roof. Dad told him to go outside and look to see what it was. My brother returned pale looking and said it was a huge bird like thing with glowing red eyes. Dad said that wasn't funny. My brother said he knew it wasn't, but was true. Dad went out, and sure enough, he came back to say, yes, it was true. They were all upset, and I was up under the roof that had been being torn off. My family was watching shingles coming down through the air and landing on the ground out front and back. They got the guns out, and I was told to lay down and go to sleep. It was okay for a while, but then it started again. My brother came to me and said to look out my window. He told me to look at those little red glowing lights outside. They were eyes. I could see huge spindly wings out there walking around on the ground. It was like they were there on their elbows. It was creepy. Dad took a gun out, and then I heard him yell at me saying they were going to hurt him if I didn't tell them what he had never, that I, excuse me, this is a little complicated. Dad took a gun out, and then I heard him yell at me saying that they were going to hurt him if I didn't tell them that he had never hurt me. I said I wasn't allowed to tell lies, and he asked me nicely to be nice for him. So I did. I told them I was okay, and I was with my siblings who were older and took care of me. He was scared, and he couldn't even see several of them out there near him. We saw him back slowly into the doorway. I felt they were in my mind asking what I wanted most in life. I remember thinking I just wanted to run around and have fun like other kids did. I did go to sleep. I went to sleep, and it was quiet until about 2 a.m. I woke up to the sound of my older brother's voice asking what we were doing outside with those things and what they were. How did I get outside? My younger brother was behind me. We were running through what I thought was a tunnel on the lawn. I woke up more and saw it was these things lined up with their wings arched over like a tunnel, and we had been running through them. I was horrified, and our older brother saw this. He said dad had sent him out, and my dad was hanging out the window telling us quietly it was okay, we weren't in trouble, but we should come in because it's late. The older brother said dad was really scared to come outside because those things wanted to hurt him. I asked how he could tell. He laughed a little and said he'd never seen him like this before, and said he'd woken up and asked to go out and get us back into the house. We both dropped our jaws and said, "He asked you?" We went inside and went right to bed before we got beat for it. We never did, and the next day it was like no one wanted to talk about it. Now, my younger brother kept asking what those things were, and it wasn't funny that dad was so scared of them. My head started to hurt. Then I was later diagnosed with traumatic childhood amnesia in 1983, but I have a photographic memory. Okay, so I had no memory of these things until some years later. It was difficult to wrap my head around all this, and it still is. Earlier this year, at the end of February 2011, I started to again hear the voice of these things in my mind. It showed me ripples in a pond. I didn't know what that was supposed to be for, and I was busy working, so I pushed it out of my mind. Now, my mind was being pulled to Middletown, Ohio on the map. I thought, okay, what's this about? Spit it out. I'm busy these days. No explanation. This continued and still is happening even now. I was looking at other things about archaeology, and up comes information about the Thunderbird, dragons, snakes, and how it applies to Native American culture. Now, I am Shawnee and a direct descendant of Tecumseh. I still got this unknown man in my mind, and he seems to want to chat, but I'm thinking about these things eat people, and people have to been known to disappear after seeing these things. I'm thinking I was lucky and blessed to be alive after seeing it that close twice. So, Lon, if you would, say a prayer for me. I'm still very busy with work, photography for home inspections and craft work I have at home. Still, from time to time, this voice is in my mind. This thing wants to be friends with me, but there seems to be something important he wants to convey to me. I just keep shoving it out of my head. I'm not so sure this thing isn't evil. I mean, it did kill a big dog over in West Virginia in 1967. It or they tore it to tiny bits, and there wasn't much left of it. If you'd like to turn this into a report, I'm sure it would take a lot of work to take out anything that would ID me in any way. I want people to be helped by knowing that these things are real. I can't explain what they are about, but I know that they are real. Thank you. And that signed DR. Now, in the narrative, the DR talked about being drawn to Middletown, Ohio, as she looked at a map. Well, strangely enough, just 1 week after I received the previous account, I received an email about incidents experienced by a witness and her friend. The location was near Cincinnati, Ohio. So she writes, it was about 8 p.m., and I was driving home after dropping a friend off at her house. I came to an intersection, a red light, and stopped. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a regular night. The roads were deserted. While waiting for the light to change, I saw something that looked like the back end of a deer as it quickly crossed the road. I didn't think much of it except for the fact that when I drive through there, I must be careful because deer apparently like to jump in front of cars. That stretch of road is only a couple hundred feet posted at 40 mile an hour. I slowed to about 30 to 35 mile an hour to watch and look at the deer. Now, when I looked to see if the deer was still there, I witnessed something quite a bit different. This massive thing was standing back away, but it was clearly visible. The yard it was standing in had a huge white shed with a light attached to the front. This didn't help because it cast a big shadow. The figure stood on the ground, but its height reached about the top of the doors to the shed. It had two curved like masses coming from the side. But the most obvious feature was the deep red glowing eyes coming from the center of the black mass. It was something I couldn't stop looking at. I continued to drive, but all the way home I felt I was being followed. Then I later received the following information from that same witness. Now, I'd like to share an experience my friend and I have unfortunately been dragged into. At approximately 10:30 p.m. tonight, I received an instant message from my friend about a rather disturbing encounter she had. She had reported she saw the Mothman. I sent her several messages back asking if she was all right, if she was there, etc. She eventually sent me a text message with a picture that she found by this point, and I literally got getting sick and trembling due to the anxiety and fright. We began talking about it, and I noticed a tapping at my window, a very light kind of sound. My dogs both jerked their heads forward or upward and stared at the window for a long time. Now, being in the state I was in, I refused to look. Now, for a while, the tapping stopped. She and I continued to discuss the matter at hand. Then suddenly, the tapping began again, but this time the dogs ignored it, and so did I. About 4 to 5 minutes later, I found the urge to stare at my computer monitor and look at my window. My blinds were closed, but I could faintly see something red and glowing, like taillights that had somehow made their way into the neighbor's backyard. I quickly looked away, not wanting to see it anymore. I looked again a couple minutes later, unnerved to see the red glow was still there. Again, I looked away and continued discussing this with my friend. Finally, I turned my head one final time and saw that the glow no longer remained. Now, as I'm typing this email, I'm worried as the tapping has begun again and I'm too afraid to move from this position. Above this, I've included my friend's side of the story. And should you post this, we would certainly appreciate it if you would keep both our names out of this or then keep it into one piece. We discussed calling the police, but she didn't want to make a big deal about it. Her parents brushed it off, and I have yet to tell anyone in my house about this. I'm not sure what this was, a frightening delusion or a real situation, but I'm not sure if I'm willing to face the facts and find out. Thanks for your time. Now, by that time, I hadn't even received a specific location from this witness, other than it was close to Cincinnati. But I did receive another update later, and she states, "Well, both my friend and I live in Middletown, Ohio. There was another encounter I had shortly after I sent the email, and I kept forgetting that I hadn't sent it. I walked out of my room to wash my face, try and calm down, etc., and my brother's room is directly across the hall from mine. I looked straight ahead and was looking right through the window of his room. I stared at it for a while, feeling kind of cold and then feeling really scared, and I finally pulled my eyes away and went about my business. When I came out of my bathroom, I didn't look in the direction of his room. Now, my friend reported that what she saw was more oblique shaped eyes and looked kind of angry, while mine had large round eyes and seemed kind of curious or something. Now, sorry I didn't include this in the original message. Like I said, this happened after I sent the email, and I kept assuming I had included it when I hadn't. Other than the weird sightings, there wasn't any strange activity that I can recall. Now, that was the last of what I heard from her. And by the way, the original experiencer, DR, never contacted me after 2013. We had talked on previous occasions about a lot of different things, and I knew she was intuitive, but I haven't been able to get a hold of her. I did try to reach her for over a decade without success. And to be honest, I have this nagging sensation that she may succumb to her abilities and her past somehow. I don't know. That's just the way I feel. But I just hope that that didn't occur. So, folks, that's the account. If you have any questions, please feel to put them up there. Okay. Laurie Sue Cragen Clammett. As I recall, Mothman was seen prior as an ominous warding of sorts. Well, yeah, the harbinger theory or the portent of doom theory. Of course, when the Silver Bridge collapsed, everybody was saying as an excuse, look, you had 46 people die just before Christmas. You're in a small town. You're looking for excuses as to why it happened. And since someone later, after the fact, stated that they saw the Mothman flying or on the top of the bridge before the collapse, they thought that this was a harbinger of some type. And there have been other accounts of related to harbingers involved with winged humanoids and Mothman. Of course, John Keel played this all up, and as part of the Mothman prophecies. How much it is really related to what really happened, I don't know, but that is the overwhelming theory that a lot of people have. Jacques Leconte, why did they try and kill these creatures? I don't know. You'd had to ask them, but I have no idea. Um, I don't know. She never did say that, but apparently these people down in West Virginia who were friends of her father were frightened of this thing. And, you know, when humans get frightened, first thing they're trying to figure out is how to get rid of it somehow. Christina, do you think they have some sort of telepathy to calm the dogs? I think they have telepathy and they do use it. Um, and I think a lot of cryptids do that. I'm pretty sure Bigfoot do. I think, and I know for a fact from some of the accounts I've received from witnesses that the cryptid canines do the same thing. I think they also possess some type of infrasound to kind of take the edge off a a situation or an encounter, but I have talked to several people over the years who have had cryptid encounters, including Mothman encounters. And many of them do tell me that they do hear a voice in their head. Barbara Moore, I wonder if sightings increase during M retrograde. I really don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look into that, but I really don't know. Paranormal Portal, how often do you find these winged humanoids being reported as having feathers? Um, Point Pleasant, those sightings around Point Pleasant, Mason County, in that area, and we've had sightings all up and down the Ohio River, quite frankly. They almost always have some type of feathers. It's not like what's been going on in Chicago because those beings have all membrane wings, membrane body, no feathers. Many times they're kind of shiny looking, like they're wet. Um, that's not the description that we received in West Virginia, up and down the river, and other areas where we have these sightings at. Um, what's going on in Chicago is different than what happened at Point Pleasant. It may come from the same place, but it's not the same creatures. There's just no way. Not from what we've been getting. Now, early on in Chicago, we did get some sightings of some creatures who did have feathers. Some people were referring to the owl men, but there weren't many of those. And occasionally, I will get an owl man sighting. We've been getting some in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, more recently, of owl men. So maybe I will have to talk about that at some point. Sinfully Weekend, I think 67. I feel Mothman got a bad rap. I think he is a gel of sorts trying toward to warn of danger. That may very well be. I mean, I have received some accounts where it may be a harbinger. Some early accounts, actually, many, many years ago, where people had seen winged humanoids or what they thought may have been an angel or something to that effect before a disaster. Um, but there just really is not a lot of proof or substantial proof to prove that these things are some type of harbinger. Of course, I have talked about the blackbird of Chernobyl and the people seeing that and reporting it days before the nuclear reactor um, accident. And that's probably the only well known harbinger related type of sighting of a winged being. But there have been some claims from other people. So, but personally, I don't necessarily buy into it. Melinda Murphy, do you think such creatures are aliens? I guess it depends what you consider an alien. If they're alien to our world, yeah. I mean, if they're not from this world, maybe they're alien. Who knows? I think, and this is my opinion, I think that these creatures come from a linear dimension or a dimension linear to our Earth plane. In other words, I think they have the ability to move between our world and their other world using either a portal or something, but they're able to do it with keeping their physical aspects intact. I think they are corporeal. Um, I think they can relate to us, just like in this account and others who I have talked to. Can Squatch. So this premonition predicted the collapse, but they went over to West Virginia before it happened. Where do you think the winged beings come from? Like I said before, I think they do come from a linear dimension. I don't think that they're seen all the time on our Earth plane. Um, just like what's been going on in Chicago, the sightings are very fleeting for the most part, very quick sightings. So I think they move in and out of our worlds. I really do. Dagnammit, do you think the Mothman's red eyes can hypnotize you? Um, I have had a couple witnesses state that they are very drawn to the eyes. I've had witnesses in even Chicago area state the same thing, though probably not as prevalent as the sightings in West Virginia and some of those older sightings. And look, I still get Mothman accounts from Mason County, West Virginia, and all up and down the Ohio River. It still occurs. These things are still showing up there. Linda Murphy, so they are regional? I don't know that. I mean, I know we do have specific areas where they're seen more than any other place. Are they regional? I guess in that respect they are. But quite frankly, I've had winged humanoid sightings all over the world. And I will be getting into more and more of these international sightings as time goes on. I'm just starting to get into the list that Unsolved Mysteries sent to me. And I do need to try to get a hold of some of these people. So I'll be inching those out here and there. But I think it is a worldwide phenomenon, and I just don't think it's regional. Kevin Emery, could they use echolocation for navigation? You know, I've had people ask me that before, just like a bat. Um, yeah, I think it's possible, but quite frankly, I haven't really received any evidence or any testimony or anecdotal testimony from any of the witnesses making that seem like something that they do possess. Though there have been many times when they do make a clicking sound. Um, Especially the sightings we had just west of the airport in Bensenville, Illinois. Many of those sightings include clicking noises from these creatures. So, was that some type of echo bilocation type of phenomena? I guess it's absolutely possible. Mary Mother Trucker, do you ever hear of sea creatures from people? Yes, I do. And I have talked about sea creatures many times on my videos. And since I'm on this network now, I will try to do some more and as they come my way. And look, for those folks who are sending super chat and donations, I do appreciate it very much. I can't get them directly from here. I had to do it on my phone, but if you have given, I do appreciate it. Mike Bothwell, Lon, what is your opinion on the octopus theory being aliens? You know, there, over the years there have been these sightings of these so-called hovering or flying octopus or octopi or whatever you want to call them. I don't know. I've received some of those myself. As to what they are, I don't know. You know, there have been theories that squid and octopus or octopi are probably as near to any alien creature we have on this earth. I don't know if that's true or not, but there have been statements to that effect, so maybe they are aliens. Tess Jordan. Maybe they're time benders coming to observe disasters. Um, Maybe. Yeah, I mean that's a plausible theory. I mean, maybe they can tell something's going to happen, or it's something they see into the future, or some type of time travel back from the future where they can, they're coming onto our plane to witness something. Now, I can't say anything in the Chicago area has had anything related to them being here in some type of disaster because we just can't find anything or anything that's related to the sightings. Barbara Mora, external terrestrials. Is that a new description or has it been used before? I have never heard that one. I've heard a lot of uh, ultra terrestrials, multi terrestrials, and such. External, I've never heard that statement. Linda Murphy, are they time travelers? They could be. They could be. I think alien beings, for the most part, what people report, experiences report, may very well be time travelers that move. Or, and I've talked about this before, are evolved humans that have the ability somehow to get back and to observe. I think it's possible. Um, at this point in our technology knowledge, I don't think we can really prove that as of yet, but it's good to speculate, I guess. Jose Sanchez, animals are very sensitive to paranormal activity, but there are instances where they either freeze or run away, especially in the presence of cryptids. Yeah, that does happen, and I have seen it happen when you know when I'm involved. I've seen. Let's put it this way: I have seen it in homes where I'm doing an investigation where the pet will literally just act like there's something there or like they're looking at something. They do have insight. I truly believe that. Julie Jules. Well, the eyes are the window to the soul, so could be. I guess so. I guess it is. Now I feel guilty ingesting calamari. I just saw that in chat. Can't squatch. Winged beings are mentioned in the Book of Enoch. Do you think there are connections, past legends, history of these present day Mothmen? Very well could be. Um, but of course, I mean, I guess it depends on your level of belief in the Bible or the Old Testament or even the Book of Enoch. Um, they've talked about the Watchers. They talked which are supposedly angels, but could be winged humanoids or even extraterrestrial. They talk about the Anunnaki having wings. I think there's a connection somehow, though I don't think we really even got close to figuring out what the connection actually is. Laurie Sue Cragen claimant. Just today, new sighting over the Jersey coast have been reported objects exiting the ocean several at a time. Do not are unable to do this, so it's been intriguing to see the videos of this. Well, these um these underwater sightings of unidentified craft have been known to happen. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean is well known for seeing a lot of this. Even over off of Santa Barbara, there have been reports of those on the West Coast. Of course, Nova Scotia, there have been several sightings. Many times, people do see lights. I have had several encounter reports written to me about underwater craft. I even have a couple Coast Guard related sightings. And I have talked about those in the past, but maybe I'll go back and look into it again. Jacques LeConte, do you think ETs are interdimensional or interstellar, Lon? I don't think they're interstellar. I think they're interdimensional to a degree, but I think they use wormhole technology of some type where they can kind of bend space and time, move within possible universes, move within dimensions. But the whole UFO interstellar travel thing, I have questions about that. I just don't necessarily believe that's the case, but that's just my opinion. Y'all keeping Christine busy tonight. Okay. Well, folks, I want to thank you for coming in tonight and for watching and chatting. And if you did donate, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes all this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. Now, if you have a sighting or encounter report that you'd like to be considered for this personal report show or post on Phantoms and Monsters, feel free to contact me at Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com. And so till next week, and next week I will have an interview guest. Rissa Miller will be joining me. Rissa and I have done an investigation together locally, and we have she is now on the team. She is now on the Phantoms Monsters Fortean Research team. So she will be joining me next week. We will be talking about the Yorktown Hotel investigation that we were involved with back in June. And then she will return 3 weeks after that, and we'll talk about something else that we have deep interest in, some connectivity about. So until next weekend, you have a nice. Until next week, next Friday night, you have a nice weekend. Stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.